There's something haunting about silence, especially when it comes from someone you care about. We often mistake it for indifference. But what if that silence holds more weight than 1,000 spoken words? What if in the quiet someone is thinking about you not in the shallow way we imagine, but in a deeper, more deliberate sense, not fantasizing, not obsessing, but contemplating? In a world addicted to noise and instant feedback, we forget that true thoughtfulness often goes unnoticed. We measure love by emojis, loyalty by replies, attention by how loud someone speaks about us. But the Stoics, those calm, disciplined minds of ancient philosophy, had a very different standard. They understood that what's rare is often invisible. And contemplation, that's one of the rarest, most misunderstood forms of attention you'll ever receive. Let me tell you something you've probably experienced, but didn't know how to name. Have you ever had someone remember something you said weeks ago? Something small, something you didn't even remember sharing. They don't bring it up to flatter you. They mention it offhand, like it had lived rent-free in their mind. That's not flirting. That's not charm. That's contemplation. They held your words, turned them over, questioned them, maybe even let them shape how they saw the world. And in that quiet exchange, you became more than a passing character in their day. You became a thought worth revisiting. This kind of attention doesn't always come dressed in romantic gestures or poetic messages. In fact, the people who are truly contemplating you might look like they're not doing anything at all. But Stoicism teaches us to look deeper. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When someone allows your presence to tint their thinking, their soul is slowly coloring itself in your hue, even if you never see the process unfold. Now here's the strange part. People who truly contemplate you often don't rush to act on it. They don't interrupt your life with declarations or demands. They observe, reflect. They consider how you move, how you speak, what makes you hesitate. Not because they want to control or conquer, but because they're trying to understand. You see, to the Stoic mind, understanding is the highest form of respect. It's the opposite of impulse. It's patience with purpose. And sometimes the most powerful contemplation shows up as restraint. They could have reached out in the heat of emotion, but they didn't. Not because they don't care, but because they do. Because they value the clarity that comes from letting emotions settle. That pause, that silence, it's not distance, it's reverence. There was a man I once knew, quiet, steady, always calm. He never told me what he felt directly. He wasn't the type to compliment or confess. But years later, he recited back a conversation we had under a street lamp one rainy night. Word for word, he'd remembered the way I described my fear of becoming irrelevant. He remembered the tone in my voice when I said I didn't think I mattered. He didn't say much back then, but that night had lived inside him, and I realized I had been contemplated, not admired, not chased, but truly seen. Here's the irony: when someone truly thinks about you, they often don't make a show of it, because it's not about them, it's not performance, it's presence. In the Stoic sense, to contemplate someone is to give them space in your mind without trying to own or change them. It's to reflect on their existence, not for entertainment or attachment, but to understand them as they are. That's why it feels rare. That's why it's hard to recognize. And maybe that's why we miss it. You see, we've been conditioned to chase surface-level proof. Likes, comments, praise, passion. We want loud love. But Stoicism reminds us that truth often moves quietly. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The person who contemplates you doesn't rush to say who you should be. They try to see who you are. That's much harder. That's much more valuable. It means they're not responding to the version of you that's loudest or prettiest or most convenient. They're looking for the deeper, steadier version, the one you sometimes forget to be. This kind of attention is unnerving because it doesn't ask for your approval. It simply exists. Like sunlight warming you through a window you didn't know was open. It doesn't chase. It doesn't demand. But once you recognize it, it changes the way you think about connection, and maybe that's the point. Stoic philosophy is about seeing clearly, not sentimentally. It teaches us to value what's internal, not what's flashy. So when someone gives you the gift of their internal attention, their quiet analysis of your words, their slow rereading of your actions, they're honoring you in the most stoic way possible, not with emotion, but with clarity. Let's pause here, because I know what you might be thinking. If contemplation is so quiet, so subtle, how can we even tell it's happening? Shouldn't love or care be more obvious? That's the modern mind talking, the one that's been trained to expect dopamine-level proof. But the Stoic mind, it understands that the deepest forces are often invisible. Just like gravity holds the earth together without making a sound, contemplation holds space for you in someone's mind without drawing attention to itself. Think about the last time someone changed their behavior based on something you said, not because you asked, but because they heard you. Not because they wanted points, but because they understood. That's a Stoic kind of love. A love rooted in perception, not projection. We're not talking about obsession. We're talking about consideration, not fantasy, but thought. And in a time where so much of life is reactionary and performative, this kind of thoughtful reflection is revolutionary. It says, I care about you enough to think before I speak. I value you enough to wait before I act. I see you enough to wonder who you are when you're not trying to be seen. It's easy to miss this kind of presence when we're looking for proof. But if you slow down, if you apply Stoic awareness to your relationships, you'll start to notice it. The way someone remembers your patterns, the way they mirror your boundaries, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. The way they respect your silence instead of rushing to fill it. The way they prepare before speaking to you because they don't want to show up carelessly. That's the sign. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's real. So what do you do with this knowledge? First, you begin to look past appearances. Train your attention like a Stoic. Don't be dazzled by the immediate. Look for the patterns, the pauses, the unspoken respect. Pay attention to the way people carry your presence even when you're not around. Second, apply this same contemplation to others. Don't just react, reflect. When someone speaks to you, don't just wait for your turn to talk. Let their words echo. Let them disturb your assumptions. Let them teach you how to see beyond your own perspective, because that too is love in the Stoic sense. And finally, here's the hardest part. Be okay with not always knowing. Just because someone doesn't post about you, text you constantly, or shower you in affection doesn't mean you're forgotten. Sometimes you are not the conversation, but the contemplation, and that is a much deeper form of presence. You are not forgotten. You are considered. And in a world full of noise, being contemplated might be the quietest, strongest proof that you matter. If this spoke to you, I invite you to pause, to reflect, and maybe even to begin contemplating someone in your own life gently, patiently, without expectation. That's how we bring Stoic philosophy into the real world, not through theory, but through practice. And if you found value in this perspective, consider subscribing to the channel. We explore these deeper truths every week. Quiet strength, emotional clarity, and the ancient wisdom of Stoicism made practical for modern life. Until next time, stay grounded, stay observant, and remember, you don't need to be loud to be unforgettable.